greenhouse production in Ghana is becoming prominent. We advise everybody to go into it because it helps more than the open field production, especially for produce like tomatoes, sweet pepper, cucumber. You get much yield if you are doing the greenhouse production. You don't need a lot of space. Even with a little space, you can do a whole lot and harvest more.
The Fresh Green Project, which started in 2018, is a research led by the Wageningen University and Research and BU Greenhouse Horticulture, and also involving 3 partner greenhouse farms. The project was undertaken in Ghana by the ARF Consortium, which includes Safisana Ghana, Agri Impact, Premium Vegetables, and Urban Jungle. On behalf of Safisana, being the project coordinator and lead ARF Consortium member, I take great pride in welcoming you all attendees to the Knowledge Sharing Conference of the Fresh Green Project. Your presence here reflects the growing space of protected horticulture in Ghana, one we must all take advantage of. Greenhouse farming has become very widespread and is gradually taking over our traditional vegetable farming. As active members of the agricultural value chain, it is important to equip ourselves with whatever knowledge and technical know-how that is available to ensure that we are well equipped to make greenhouse work for us. Sharing knowledge and experiences is critical to ensuring productivity and sustaining it over time. This is a good place to start. Amongst us here are input suppliers, agronomists, constructors, seed suppliers, and novices. Let's all learn all there is to learn. Let's take all the contacts we need and let's go make a difference. Welcome and thank you.
Fresh Green came in at a time when this slaughter has already been completed. So it was then difficult for us to make changes. But the few changes that they recommended and we did, we've seen improvements. And that has helped us a lot. In fact, that has also given us the confidence, to be able to at least revamp this place. If you look at the greenhouse, for example, we didn't have this net before, and the temperature was so high, beyond the acceptable temperature. So they recommended that we put a net at the top to reduce the temperature and the heat effect. So we did. But there are some of the recommendations that we could not do because we felt that it would not be cost effective to do that. Instead, it would be better to put those investments into building a new greenhouse that will comply with the required standards.
So Fresh Green was a project that we were part of that is supposed to look at the whole greenhouse infrastructure in Ghana and find ways to improve it and make it more sustainable so that more people can go into the production of vegetables using protected horticulture. The project was mainly about collecting data, both internal and external, and using models to figure out what were the easiest ways to implement greenhouses in Ghana. So the external influences were cost of greenhouses, which ones were the most economically viable in terms of size, in terms of costs. Internal factors, we're looking at things like how do you measure heat, how do you measure humidity, how do you measure all the elements that are going on inside the crop. Some of the input prices, input availability, produce handling, temperature controls. Those are some of the things that the project looked at. And so the recommendations the project is coming out with are all based on all of these factors and how to get them to a sweet spot where the typical Ghanaian can go say, okay, I am going to the greenhouse industry and I have enough knowledge to be able to go out and do this sustainably.
The first phase of the project brought in weather stations. The project funded us with weather stations that we installed at Premium Foods, Urban Jungle, and also Agri Impact greenhouse locations. These weather stations help us to take data weekly about what is going on in the structure in terms of its humidity, wind, direction, and everything. And this information at the end of the day is being collated and sent to Wageningen University, our partners over there, who analyze the information and put meanings to it. Then we send the information back to the farmers, and which pre-inform them on what they are supposed to do, on probably if they have to change something in their production system, if they have to do something to their structure to help regulate the humidity and the wind direction that will help their vegetables to grow much more healthy for them to get much produce. The weather station has been so much helpful because it has helped the partners in the projects like Urban Jungle, Agri Impact for us, and also Premium Foods to be able to make some changes to our structures and also on how we should follow our protocols and other stuff.
I'm glad that this morning we could meet as stakeholders in the greenhouse industry. Some years back, if we were to call for people in greenhouse industry, we'll get maybe 2 or 3. But today, the number of people who are here, I guess we are more than 40. The industry has grown, and we still have a long way to go. Somewhere in 2006, 2007, the USAID funded a project, and that project was managed by ASNAP. And the idea was to see how we can develop capacity in greenhouse industry in Ghana. Based on that project, ASNAP took some researchers from University of Ghana, Dr. Kumaga, and then Professor Akroma from KNUST, to Stellenbosch University in South Africa to learn how to grow in greenhouse, understand greenhouse industry, and bring greenhouse production into Ghana. If I look back, then I realized that I had no idea what greenhouse was. But these researchers came back, they had the idea, we all had a bit of knowledge of greenhouse to our level, but there were no resources to start any greenhouse projects. So we decided to start with hydroponics, and we put up a small hydroponics unit at the Faculty of Agric, University of Ghana. At that time, there was another project with Southern University in the US, and they brought a simple technology where we could use PVC pipes to do hydroponics in Ghana. It was a bit successful, but at the same time, there was no funding. Then ASNAP decided to do the greenhouse itself, a wooden greenhouse. We put up a wooden structure at Brekusu, imported plastic sheets and irrigation equipment. By the time they arrived at the port, we did not have money to pay for duty. So they told us we could go for exemption. By the time we got the exemption, the demurrage was more than the duty itself. So as of today, we don't know where those equipments are. Now, subsequent to that, the Skills Development Fund of the World Bank and Danida also showed interest in greenhouse production. And they financed Agri Impact to set up a greenhouse training institute at Brekusu, which is still alive, very active, and doing training as at today. That was somewhere 2015, 2016, where we set up the Greenhouse Training Center. So we were producing under the greenhouse, selling the produce, at the same time training people. From the SMV and HortiFresh project with Agri Impact came Skills Development Fund SDF Part 2. So we brought bamboo greenhouse to Ghana, and Agri Impact took some of our staff to India. They were there for a number of weeks to study how India is using bamboo to produce or to construct greenhouses. We brought the world's best bamboo greenhouse construction experts from India to Ghana. We combed around doing assessment of various bamboo types that we have. We got the technology for bamboo preservation for greenhouses, and we put up bamboo greenhouse at Brekusu. But somewhere along the line, we realized that, number one, the bamboos that we have in Ghana do not have the same characteristics as the bamboos in India. They were not strong enough. Our preservation was also not strong enough. And then we started having termites and weevils getting into the bamboo, even though we had treated it with chemicals and heat. Then the plastic started tearing apart, so we abandoned it.
During one of our seminars, one of the facilitators drew our attention to the fact that sometimes the greenhouse might not be bad. You might have a very good land, but where you even position it towards the wind direction, towards other climatic conditions, can let the greenhouse be effective or not. So I think it's very crucial for you to follow the Fresh Green Ghana's recommendation when you are setting up a greenhouse structure. One of the game changers was the Testo device. It was a hygrometer which measures temperature and humidity in the greenhouse. So we hung it in the greenhouse. And obviously there was also another weather station here where data was being captured for the environs, and then at the end of every 2 weeks or so it is sent to us. It was one of the key changes for us, because when we were analyzing the data, we realized that sometimes it's very, very cold outside, but you go inside and very, very, very hot. Sometimes we get extreme, especially in the night, very, 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 very cold in the greenhouses, but not that cold outside. So the two things, because the EC and pH meters were already using it, but the weather station and the climate, the internal climate check really helped us, because then it will inform you when to pollinate, when to spray, when to drop the plant, when to trellis, because for tomato needs a certain humidity and temperature for the pollen grains to fall. So when you go in there and check on the hygrometer, you know that it is right time for you to maybe shake the plants or use your artificial pollinators.
The project also seeks to address our post-harvest losses in the country. In this, what we did was we brought in sensors that we put in produce at the time of harvest. We track it from the harvest point to where the final consumer purchases the goods and see whether the state of the produce has changed over the period of its transport, whether it is still fresh and healthy. And also we compared it to the local markets. We also did an analysis of transporting the produce from the local markets when those who do open production. We went all the way to Burkina Faso to do the analysis. We put the sensor in the produce and tracked it all down to Ghana, and for the period of 1 week that it traveled, and when the consumer is buying it, how was the produce as compared to the analysis that we did in the greenhouse, and realized the greenhouse stays longer than the local production.
It's a very challenging industry to start with, so you go in with your eyes wide open. There's a lot of technical information out there to consider, like the recommendations that are coming out of this project. I would suggest anybody going into this, look at all the economics that are involved in this, determine what the break-even size, break-even crop types, break-even crop quantities are, and understand how long it will take you to achieve that break-even, how much resource you need to put in, and for how long before you reach that break-even point, before anybody jumps into this industry, because this industry is not for the faint of heart. People look at it from the outside and think, oh, it's just a building with crops. It's actually more difficult to grow in this environment than it is to grow in the open field. But once you decide to take the leap, it makes sense for us to look at all the technical data and build a facility that is well optimized to take advantage of the environment in which we are.
We recently visited Unique Flora, which has also introduced greenhouses to produce flowers to supply the domestic market first and maybe later move into the export market. But all in all, Dowenya has the largest enclave of greenhouses in the country. Beside NEIP, Agritop, and UGEP, there is also a flower company in Dawenya by the Dutch, which is producing green plants and exporting to Holland. That is also at the Dawenya enclave. So the Dawenya enclave, as we speak now, has the highest concentration of greenhouses, and I wouldn't be surprised that it may account for more than 50% in terms of space of greenhouses that we have in the country. Most of the greenhouses that we had, whether it was a tunnel or the net or 5,000 square meters or 240 square meters, irrespective of the design of greenhouse that we had in Ghana, we were all having the challenges of heat and humidity. Heat and we still have it now. The recent greenhouses that we brought from Spain, from MSC, which is the largest greenhouse manufacturing company in Europe, has a height of 6.8 meters as against the 4.8 meters that we brought from Israel. So it's very high. But when we go to Dawenya, we can record temperatures up to 40 degrees. So the issue of humidity and temperature is still a major concern to greenhouse producers in Ghana. So we designed these projects to track temperature and humidity outside the greenhouse, inside the greenhouse, and produce in transit. Produce in transit. Produce in transit in the sense that if I harvest my greenhouse from Brekusu or Dawenya, from Agritop, and I'm not using a cold van, and I'm transporting in an ordinary vehicle, from the time I pick my produce at Dawenya, I have to check the temperature. By the time I get to Makola, Abobloshi, or wherever I'm going to, I should also know the temperature for us to determine how the plants perform between the point of supply and the point of selling, whether there has been any change in temperature build-up or temperature reduction. So that was one aspect of the project. The other aspect of the project is that what is the difference between the temperature outside the greenhouse and the temperature inside the greenhouse to inform us of what kind of design we should bring up. Thank you very much for listening to me this morning.
Greenhouse production is like taking care of a baby. If you don't have time for it, you get it wrong. But if you really have time for it and you follow the protocol from start to finish, you are really going to make a good harvest. For instance, certain little things like having a foot bath in front of the tunnel is important, because the foot bath prevents you from taking any insect outside into the structure. And there are certain things, the pruning regime, the time that you have to prune, you need to prune, because you can't let the leaves overtake the fruits. Sometimes the leaves is also competing with the fruits for the nutrients. So the right time for pruning, you have to prune, and all those things. All these protocols have been laid out throughout the project, and it's been well documented. So if you go to the project website, you get all this information. Or if you walk into any of the partners, that's Safisana, Agri-Impact, Premium, Hortifresh. Hortifresh was also a partner. They came on board at the moment. Hortifresh also does training for people in this sector. They even have a quarterly training that they do for people who wants to go into greenhouse production. So we are thinking of forming an association. Having an association that brings everybody on board can help we can help each other to solve our issues.